Now I have a car that won't run. First thing is to verify customer complaint. As you can see, engine cranks won't run. Fuel pressure seems to be good. So there can't be a problem with the fuel pump or related or anything else related to fuel delivery. I quickly rule that out. So I bring out the diagnostic tool, read fault codes. Yeah, and I have a lot of codes for mass airflow, for the oxygen sensor, um, for the map sensor correlation, for accelerator pedal position, for the crankshaft position sensor. Yeah, this is a lot of codes, more than 10 codes. But now I have to choose to concentrate on one and try to solve that. By doing that, I'll probably solve all the others. There has to be, when you're doing a diagnostic, you have to use your knowledge plus the tools you have at hand plus some logic, and then look at the symptoms in front of you. So immediately I need to look at the wiring diagram. I want to relate the fault codes I'm seeing to the wiring on the engine. So I can see the engine and air temperature sensors and the cam sensor do not have fault codes related to them. So I continue looking at the wiring diagram and then relating them. I'm beginning to tend towards the bottom left of the wiring diagram now, because it looks like the items there are the ones that are causing false, no, not false, they are causing fault codes in the engine computer. So I begin to focus more on these sensors and develop a plan on how to test and verify what's missing. Clearly, all the listed sensors are missing, are either faulty or missing inputs. They're unlikely to be faulty, all of them. I mean, what are the chances that 4 or 5 sensors fail at the same time on the same vehicle? Yeah, so I bring out the box to allow me to test the circuitry at the computer pins. The breakout box helps with that, and I also bring out the multimeter, and I'm suspicious about the ground connection for all these wires, for all these sensors, sorry. So I examine the wiring diagram more closely and realize all these sensors share ground on pin 28 of the engine control module. But pin 28 has a good ground, as you can tell from this test using the multimeter. So there must be an open circuit in the ground, but elsewhere, not at the pin of the ECU, of the engine control module. It has to be somewhere in the harness. But that open must be in a shared wire, section of shared wire, because it's affecting multiple sensors and therefore causing multiple codes. So my next step is to break the circuit into parts. First, I examine the voltage at the 3 wires on the mass airflow. That voltage, 1.16 volts, shouldn't have been there on the green wire on the mass airflow because that's supposed to be a ground wire. Remember, the oxygen sensor is also affected. So I'm thinking of testing at it next. Mind you, all this time I am having so many ideas, so many possibilities, so many reasons in my head that could cause this problem. So I visit the composition sensor as well before the oxygen sensor. I can see it has the reference voltage, which is fine. I also remember about the accelerator pedal position sensor. Again, on that green wire, I shouldn't have had 1.16 volts because that green wire is a ground. So that check is to confirm that the accelerator pedal position itself is functioning as it should. But because of the lack of a good ground on the green wire, we have a fault code for that sensor too. So for those who are used to hurrying to swap sensors, this wouldn't have worked. Swapping that sensor wouldn't have worked. So now I check that there is actually no continuity, absolutely no continuity between the ground and any of those wires on the sensor. Ideally, it should have been the green wire with the ground. Ground appearing on any of the other wires would also have been a problem. But in this case, it was the ground that was the issue. So yeah, that resistance should be less than 0.5 or 0.1 ohms. And the voltage is 1.16 volts. Shouldn't be that. Should be 0. So I'm taking off these sensors. I have that list of 4 sensors: composition, oxygen sensor, mass airflow, what's the other one? Oxygen sensor, mass airflow, and the accelerator pedal position sensor. So finally, I arrive at the oxygen sensor. The ground on that sensor should be on the gray wire. Yeah, so you can see that's not the case. The ground on that gray wire is bad. So the oxygen sensor doesn't have a good ground either. So now I zero, using logic, I zero down on this piece of wire here, the harness, and replace it. And you can see the results are immediate. Um, Forgive the noise. Um, you can see the ground connection has been restored on the oxygen sensor. At that point, I expected the engine to run, but then I remembered I had forgotten about the when I walked the breakout box from the engine control module. I forgot to connect the engine control module, but once I remembered that and restored it, and restored the connection with the engine control module, the engine ran, and there are no more fault codes. So it's now fixed. You can see and hear it running very well now, and there are no more fault codes. Remember, it had about 10 more than 10 fault codes, which have all disappeared with just one fix. So it's useful to keep a sober mind and make sure you are not diverted by the number of or description of fault codes. Yeah, the description can be important, but the number, sometimes you need to realize that not all components, not so many components can break down on the same car at the same moment. So now, in this case, I identified, let's recap. I realized there had to be something common that was faulty on the oxygen sensor, accelerator pedal position, crank position, and map sensor. I misspoke earlier. It was the crank position sensor, not the cam position sensor. So I found the broken wire and replaced it to restore the ground, and the engine now runs as it should. So the vehicle is fixed, and it can be returned to the customer. Thank you.